right, we welcome into the show Ahmad Hicks from FOX9, and we've had a lot of fun doing this in the past where I come up with 9 questions to rapid fire at you, Ahmad. Also, want to mention that you've got a very cool podcast coming out. Your podcast must be two sides. You're going to have Eric Kendricks on your show.
Yeah.
So, welcome back. Congratulations on that interview. I'm sure that fans will want to find that. So, where's the best place to find the Kendricks interview?
You can go to youtube.com and just type in Must Be Two Sides Podcast. It's with myself and my buddy Michael Pruitt. He's a draftee of the Minnesota Vikings from that 2015 draft class with Eric Kendrick, Stephon Diggs, Daniil Hunter, just to name a few. So we talked about that draft class and a little bit more. So I hope you guys check it out.
He was actually, if I'm not mistaken, drafted before
Oh, he
Stephon
was.
Diggs.
Yes,
Right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. The year before, we talked about that. But then, yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah. So anyway, always. I think. I mean, wasn't it that? Let me look this up. Now I'm confused. I think it was.
Hold on.
It was
Okay,
the same. I mean, in the same draft, he was taken before, like in the same round. I think, right? If I'm not mistaken here, he
Let me
was in
see.
the 5th round, and they took him first, and then they took Diggs.
Yes.
That's how it went.
So
Okay.
it was all of them in the same class. Yes.
Yes.
Eric Kendricks was the second pick after Trey Waynes.
Yes, yeah. But then that's the funny thing about the draft, right? Is that like
Yep.
Diggs becomes, the big superstar, Minneapolis Miracle guy. Like who could ever predict the draft is kind of
Crazy.
the point.
Crazy.
Anyway, well, I got a bunch of questions for you. So make sure
What's up?
everybody goes and checks that out, as well as your phenomenal coverage on Fox 9. But why don't we start out with the most obvious place to begin, Ahmad, which is the quarterback situation. Here's what I want to know. First of 9 questions. How many starts do you think Carson Wentz will make for the Minnesota Vikings this year?
As of right now, 3. I'm going 3. I think he gets the start against the Steelers. I think he gets the start against the Browns. And I think you have no choice but to go back to JJ McCarthy. Just my hunch. I just feel like if you're ever going to see what you have in your quarterback, you got to do it now. Because if you keep delaying it, pushing it off to next year, we keep having the same storyline every year.
Okay, this actually pairs with question 1 and 2. So why don't we just bunch those together? Because
Okay.
the second question is how many games would they need to win to justify Wentz starting over JJ McCarthy? Because if you look at, the next 2 games are winnable in
Yeah.
Ireland and London. If they win those 2 games, then it is hard to tell Carson Wentz, sorry, pal, but they do come back and they play against the Philadelphia Eagles. If that doesn't go well, then are you considering starting McCarthy on a Thursday night against the Chargers? Like, it's not the easiest thing to figure out if they win these next 2 games.
Right. Yeah. I know it's a very, very tough decision for Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Look, Carson Wentz was a starter in the National Football League, hasn't been a starter for a very long time. I think that speaks volumes to why he's been a backup. You know what I'm saying? So even if he is given multiple opportunities, we don't know what we're going to get from Carson Wentz. We saw him go out and orchestrate a team, lead a team to victory when his defense had 5 takeaways. Can you do that when your team doesn't have 5 takeaways? So I think, like a lot of Minnesota fans do, they jump to conclusions really fast after one game. They're like, all right, this is our guy. Let's go see him have to lead this team down to win a game. Like outside of the first drive, can you do that consistently? And I think if he plays well, like in games in the Steelers and the Browns, and he has like 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, all right, now there's a legitimate case for him to be the starting quarterback. But I just think that, right now it's JJ McCarthy's team and Carson Wentz is just doing what he's asked to do.
I think that skepticism is reasonable when it
Yeah.
comes to Carson Wentz because, as you mentioned, his recent history is mostly as a backup quarterback. But I have to say that I am influenced in my thoughts on this by what happened last year, where most of the world thought that Sam Darnold was going to win 6 or 7 games, and then he ends up winning 14. I think it does come to a little bit of a bigger question about Kevin O'Connell and his offense and
Yeah.
just whether this offense can be run by a brand new quarterback. It kind of reminds me a little bit of San Francisco throwing Trey Lance in there and then being like, we want the athletic quarterback. Oh no, we want the game manager, right? Like turn around the car. We did the wrong thing. So I don't know where this is going to go with Wentz and how well he's going to play because it was kind of a unique game where Isaiah Rodgers gets them up by so much that he didn't have to really put a lot on his shoulders. But I do think there might be something to be said for the challenge of running this offense where it's not like Kevin O'Connell makes life easy for his quarterback.
Right. And you know what I'm saying? Like we saw what he was able to do a couple of years ago with Josh Dobbs coming in and having to get him up to speed and whatnot. But I think you're at your best as a play caller and as a head coach when you have someone that fully understands and trusts your system and knows where to go with the football. Like I think we saw very a bare minimum thing for Carson Wentz in the game this past weekend. Like he wasn't asked to do a lot. You know what I'm saying? So can you get to those second, third, and fourth reads and things like that? Can you identify where blitzes are coming from and where to shift your offensive line? So, I think you kind of got to go with the guy that's been around, but I'm not sold on JJ McCarthy just like everybody else, but I'm not willing to just push him to the side yet and be like, this isn't the guy of the future. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. I think that if you're bailing on JJ McCarthy after 2 games, that would be foolish. And it would be foolish for the Vikings as well. I think what it comes down to is question number 3, actually, which is the trust level of Kevin O'Connell to manage the way through this
Mm,
quarterback situation. So I gave
mm,
you for the bit here to put it on a 1 to 10 confidence level of O'Connell working his way through this, because I do think that if you're a coach and he's not on the hot seat or anything like that, but you want to win, you want to get to the playoffs, and developing a quarterback on the fly while you're trying to win with a great team doesn't exactly gel as much as it does to have a veteran game manager. So that's where I think it becomes tricky for him. So your confidence in Kevin O'Connell managing his way through this quarterback situation.
10. 10. I think he's a quarterback whisperer. I think Daniel Jones wanted to come here for a reason. I think Sam Darnold wanted to come to Minnesota for a reason. I think Carson Wentz wanted to come here for a reason. We asked him that prior to his first start, and he said, hey, look, I'm still learning, about Kevin O'Connell's, level of genius and getting quarterbacks ready in such a short amount of time. So I think these guys put a lot of trust in him. And I'm giving him a 10 because, Matthew, he was a former quarterback that didn't make it. And he's come out on the record and said, like, look, I would have been more successful as a quarterback in the National Football League if I had a coach that believed in me. If I had a coach that would tell me, hey, you're doing okay. This is what I want you to do better, instead of just putting you down. How kind of the NFL was back in the day. It was very cutthroat, very blunt. You're not good. You're not meant for this business. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that Kevin O'Connell's ability to put himself and his players' shoes and understand the struggles they may be going through or the challenges they may have and reading defenses and whatnot, he can always dumb it down for them and things like that. So my confidence in KOC is a 10, I think, because he was in these shoes. He's walked their path before, and he kind of knows how to get the best out of his quarterbacks. And he said it first. He said, I think the NFL and organizations fail young quarterbacks more than young quarterbacks fail the organizations.
Right. And that's where the hard part for Vikings fans might be if Kevin O'Connell lands on the conclusion that regardless of how Wentz is playing, that McCarthy needs more time. That is, I think, very disappointing to Vikings fans because he was presented as being ready to start this year to us,
Yeah.
to the fans. And I mean, look, you and I were out there watching Sam Howell all summer being like, they're not even challenging JJ McCarthy for this job. So why would anyone think that suddenly Carson Wentz would show up? But it's hard to figure it out watching training camp for anybody, for the coaches, for the teammates, for us. And in those first 2 games, some of those key markers were not matching up of getting the ball out on time. And the thing that I wonder if what O'Connell thinks about this is McCarthy has now had 2 injuries and he's
Hmm.
played a grand total of what, including preseason, like 4 games. I
Four
mean,
games.
and he's had 2 injuries. Do you want him out there if he can't protect himself because he's holding on to the ball too long? But then at the same time, Ahmad, I do buy when people are talking about, hey, they didn't have Christian Darrisaw and it wasn't maybe the best game plan and they didn't lean onto the run game to help him out. So I think that there has to be some evaluation, but also maybe some reflection as well. If you're going to bring him back in, there has to be more easy button stuff for him and he has to be protected better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that, people outside of us, I feel like don't understand watching the Vikings is they didn't have Christian Darrisaw the first 2 weeks. They also didn't have the guy who JJ McCarthy built the connection with during training camp in Jordan Addison. Now you're talking about you're gonna have Christian Darrisaw back. You're gonna have Jordan Addison back. So now you're gonna have that full offensive line, especially when Donovan Jackson returns from his wrist injury, hopefully around the same time as JJ McCarthy. Now you're talking about he has all of his weapons. He has his head coach, his play caller. There are no excuses now. You know what I'm saying? And so I think we should give him a fair shake with the 5 guys up front because look, you can have all the pieces you want. You can have Kevin O'Connell. You can play bad opponents. But if you don't have a good left tackle in the National Football League, you're going to be in trouble regardless of who plays quarterback. And that's why Carson Wentz was sacked so many times.
Folks, I know a lot of you out there either own your own business or you are in a management position where you have to hire people, and it can be such a headache. You have to sort through all sorts of resumes of people who aren't qualified, and you end up overlooking some of the best candidates. It's tough, but what is not tough is using ZipRecruiter for your hiring needs. ZipRecruiter finds amazing candidates for you and fast. And right now you could try it for free at ziprecruiter.com/audio. It's just so easy that you have to try it. You can use their smart technology that finds great candidates for you, or you can use the invite to apply button that allows you to reach out to your favorite candidates. There's a lot of ways that you can make ZipRecruiter your best recruiting tool. Ditch the other hiring sites. Let ZipRecruiter find what you're looking for, that needle in a haystack. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. So try it for free at this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/audio. Again, that is ziprecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Yeah, no, and I think Wentz also himself needed to get rid of the ball a couple of those times too, and was trying to make a play or two off a schedule that is maybe not in his repertoire these
Yeah.
days, like it was back in 2017 when he had not been in the league for so long and accrued all the injuries and so forth. But we can't really figure it out unless we see it. But they also can't really put him back in if they're winning. And I think O'Connell has his work cut out and will earn that very large paycheck throughout the rest of this development process for JJ McCarthy as they go forward. But I don't think anyone would say it's a good idea to just write it off,
Right.
that McCarthy could come back in and play well. Next question, it pertains to the game this week that the Vikings are playing. That is so much focus on the quarterback situation, but we know who's starting against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We also know who's starting for the Steelers, which would be Aaron Rodgers. Over under on FanDuel for Aaron Rodgers is 202.5 yards against
Hmm.
this vaunted Vikings defense. Do you think that Aaron Rodgers goes over or under 202.5 yards, Ahmad?
Man, it's tough, Matthew. Um, I feel like he borders that. I'm gonna say under because I feel like the Vikings defense like is playing out of this world. Like especially Jalen Redmond. You're talking about a backup interior defensive lineman demanding so much attention from the interior offensive line on opposing teams. Like I just think they have so many guys to get after the quarterback. Like we haven't even really talked about the absence of Blake Cashman because the front line has been playing so well, and then you insert Harrison Smith back into the secondary, and Isaiah Rodgers doing what he did last week and that confidence. I mean, I don't see Calvin Austin or DK Metcalf or Pat Fryermuth just torching this defense. So I'm going to have to take the under on this one.
The interesting stat for Aaron Rodgers so far that I've noticed is, according to PFF, he has just 2 big-time throws so far this year and 5 turnover-worthy plays, which is the 7th most in the NFL. And they have him graded as the second worst starting quarterback in football right now, right? Which, I think with his traditional statistics hasn't been bad. 586 yards, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks. But a lot of that came against the Jets in that first game. A lot of screen passes to DK Metcalf, a couple of wide open throws. We just haven't seen Aaron Rodgers look like a top notch quarterback since probably 2021. And
Right.
yet people keep talking themselves into the idea that that's the case. The one concern I guess I would have is if they can get some of the Arthur Smith play action stuff going. The Vikings run defense was much better last week. I just don't buy Aaron Rodgers these days and what's left of him outside of the every once in a while, whoa, he's still got the arm. But when they pressure him, I think he's going to look slower than Jake Browning.
Yeah, I honestly that's my thing. Like he can't really extend plays, and if he does, it's only for 2 seconds. Like I don't know if you guys watched the tape of Dallas Turner last week, but that closing speed, my goodness, he looked like a running back hunting down Jake Browning. So look, Aaron Rodgers, I think is going to be on the move quite a bit this game, and I think Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, those guys are going to have a field day when you talk about a non-mobile quarterback in Aaron Rodgers.
His PFF grade when pressured this year is 27.4, which is
Not good.
absolutely horrific. Yeah, right.
Wow.
So if he's not getting rid of the ball quickly, he is in a lot of trouble. I do think that every once in a while, when you have an old wily vet, that they can find something. But the way he looked even for the Jets last year against this defense didn't look like he was seeing it that great. Speaking of this defense, the next question I have on my list here is how good are they really, considering the schedule, considering all the different stars that they're going to face going forward, but also how they've played so far? Where are they going to rank, Ahmad? Like, how good do you think that the Vikings defense will end up being, let's just say in points against, the thing that
Yeah.
matters the most at the end of the year?
They'll be a top 10 defense. I think they'll be a top 10 defense, especially with the teams that they end the season with. I think they have a gauntlet coming up after that bye, like a 4 or 5 week stretch where it's brutal. But then it kind of levels out a little bit after that. So I think they'll be able to kind of like balance things out if they do give up a lot of points to the Chargers, Eagles, Ravens, But I think they still be a top 10 defense. I mean, you're talking about look at that front seven on paper. That's one of the best front sevens in the National Football League. Harrison Smith, future Hall of Famer. Josh Metellus, borderline all pro. All pro and Pro Bowl safety, linebacker, whatever you want to call him. And then Isaiah Rodgers, Brian Murphy, coming into their own. Like I absolutely think they can be a top 10 defense, and I think maybe their average points given up each week under 20. I think that's what they'll end the season with, under 20.
What is your swing factor for that? I think for me, I mean, you mentioned Redmond, Levi Drake Rodriguez, the way that those guys have played on the interior. I think that it's probably two people for me. You mentioned Dallas Turner. That's a big
Mhm.
one. If he plays, I mean, he's off to a really good start, but if he plays at an exceptional level and continues to grow through the rest of the season, that becomes the deepest, nastiest front seven, or at least up there in the NFL. And then I'm going to throw Isaiah Rodgers out there as well. Okay, he's not going to do this every single week. Yeah, Isaiah, just go score 2 touchdowns the first half every single game. But if he continues to play at a high level, then that solidifies that unit to where they don't really have a weak point. If he is kind of a flash in the pan one big week and then it's inconsistency after this, then I think there's still going to be some questions. I would also throw out Jeff Okudah as a question
Yeah.
anytime that he's on the
Yeah.
field. So I know I just kind of named everything, but like, what's the one that has your attention the most?
Jeff Okudah. I think that's I won't say biggest question mark for this team, but you see like every game that he's played in, he's been somewhat nicked up. Like, he's had a concussion, he's gotten up slow after a couple of tackles, but when he comes on the field, when like another team trots out 4 wide receivers and the Vikings go dime or they go nickel and Jeff Okudah has to come out there on that field and Byron Murphy goes inside and he's spread out outside against the X or Z, can you hold up? Can you hold your own water? We saw Isaiah Rodgers do that on a fade ball with T. Higgins, where he not only was running step for step with him, he turned and found the ball, then he was able to get a PBU. Can Jeff Okudah do that consistently? I think that's going to be the deciding factor on this defense, especially when you start talking about good quarterbacks with good wide receivers and being able to test the Brian Flores defense and a quarterback not being confused by all the different looks they're seeing and knowing where to go with the ball. That means your corners have to play tight man-to-man coverage. That's what Jeff Okudah was brought here to do. So want to see him do better, want to see him be consistent. I think if he's consistent, you talk about a defense going from top 10 to top 5. I think he has that much of an impact on this defense when you're talking about the dime and nickel play. Offensively, I'm going to go with Jordan Mason. I'm going to go with Jordan Mason because he's going to be the bell cow for the next 2 games for the Minnesota Vikings, or 3 games, should I say. Aaron Jones hasn't missed 4. but I think he's going to be the bell cow. I think he has a lot of burst that people didn't know about. He has a lot of toughness. Like, he is a bruiser, but I think he also has some wiggle that people don't give him enough credit for. So I think that the Vikings need to make him a focal point moving forward. No, I'm not saying bench Aaron Jones, because Kevin O'Connell said it during training camp. It's going to be a 1A, 1B. And I think what he brings to the receiving game is tremendous. But I think you need a back that's going to beat down a defensive line and linebackers, and then let a Aaron Jones come in and burst one for 40 to 50 yards. You know what I'm saying? So Jordan Mason, Jeff Okudah, those are my two guys that I think need to have huge seasons for the Vikings to have success.
I don't mind if when Aaron Jones comes back, it's more of a 1 and 2 with the way
Mhm.
Mason has played. I mean, look, time comes for everybody, and Jones didn't look like he had the same burst. Now he's going to be coming off of a hamstring injury. His receiving ability, his leadership, I would throw his pass protection in there. I think that's
Right.
ahead of where Jordan Mason is at this time in his career. All that stuff's important. Also, they're going to get CJ Ham back to give them a little pass
Mhm.
pro on third downs if they need that. But the way that Mason looks running the football to me is exceptional. It's top
Yeah.
notch. It's finding holes. It's seeing the game extremely well. I think that his eyes probably are something I would give him a lot of credit for. We see his girth and how tough it is to tackle, but he spotted holes and picked out places to go in that outside zone that was so impressive during this game against Cincinnati and really all year long. I think he has the possibility of being one of the best backs in the NFL. So you want to ride that and then work back Aaron Jones in. But you know, it's a great point that Mason has been a game changer for this
Yeah.
offense. I don't know where they would be if it was last year or 2 years ago with the running game, especially 2 years ago. So how about
Right.
this for the next question? I think this is number 6. It's a question, yeah, 6. What has been your biggest surprise this year so far for the Vikings that is not the quarterback position? Because of course, I don't think any of us thought we'd be saying Wentz v. Rogers
Right.
in Ireland, but something that maybe when you and I were watching camp or as you were going through the off season, and now that it's come to fruition, you're like, oh, did not expect that.
That's a good question, Matthew. That's tough. Because I feel like offensively, we kind of expected ups and downs. Like, I kind of predicted that I felt like the offense would struggle weeks 1 through 8, and that the defense would have to carry the load. I would okay. This is very, very nitpicky. Um, but I will say, outside of the Bengals game, just a little inconsistency from the defense in stopping the run.
Mm.
I think that DJ Swift showed a couple of flashes in game one, Caleb Williams getting outside of the pocket, and then Bijan Robinson and all those guys going for 200 plus yards on them. That's been the one area where I'm like, I'm surprised by that, because with Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel setting the edges, and then Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman, like, I didn't expect the Vikings to give up a 100-yard rusher this early in the season, yet alone a 200-yard rushing game against the Atlanta Falcons. So that's been the one thing that surprised me, and they got it corrected versus the Bengals. Josh Matella said that's something they can't do. But I think if they want to be successful, if they want to get to all their trick plays, their gadgets, and do all that creative stuff that Brian Flores is known to do, you have to be able to stop the run. I think they've been a little inconsistent in that. They showed what they can do versus the Bengals, but now you need to go show that each and every week.
Yeah, and I think they really missed Cashman against the Atlanta Falcons. The area where that could be, I think, taped over is having a rotation with two younger players who have been really good against the run so far when they've been out there. And now Brian Flores has to kind of figure out how do you mix and match when you have two of the best interior rushers and teams pass a lot on first down. But at the same time, these other two guys are stopping the run. And even we've seen Redmond get after the passer. I mean, he has looked like a certified beast in there with his quickness and strength. So it's a good problem to have for them, but I think those guys could be the players that take it to a different level of the run game that maybe didn't play as much against the Falcons and could end up playing more. I would say you want to talk about getting deep in the weeds for biggest surprise. I think Ryan Wright's been awesome. I honestly think I'm not kidding, man. I think he kept him in the Falcons game. I think he was great against Cincinnati and Chicago, except for maybe one punt. He has been holding that football, which we heard a lot from Matt Daniels. No, I mean, overall, I just say this the special teams over the last couple of years has been a snoozer. It has not been great punting. Last year, overall, at the end of the year, they're not one of the best field goal kicking teams, even though they had streaks of being great. And they were certainly not a good returning team. And now, a guy who was an undrafted free agent who apparently didn't even get a signing bonus, according to Matt Daniels, has come in and given them a weapon in the return game. And Ryan Wright is punting more confidently, and Will Reichert is hitting 62-yard field goals. And in this world right now, where the kick return is happening 75% of the time, and field position is, I think, a different battle because you're talking about asking punters to cough and corner all the time. You're asking kickers to kick from 60 all the time. It's a big deal if you're playing well on special teams.
It is. Special teams is like they always say, Matthew, complementary football. Can't win games that the offense and defense don't complement special teams, vice versa. So Miles Price, huge addition. Oh my goodness. Like we saw flashes during training camp of his receiving ability, but once he got in that game and the injury happened to Rondell Moore and he was finally given some opportunities, we are like, whoa. Like this kid's kind of good. Like he has some bursts, he has some wiggle. And like you said, it's exciting with all the returns in the game nowadays. You need someone who can kind of shift that momentum or give you some momentum when your offense is coming on the field. So love what Miles Price is doing. You're right. You hit the nail on the head with Ryan Wright. He's been doing really good this season when called upon. And Will Reichert booting field goals. So I think if the special teams can keep playing the way that they are and the defense can keep playing the way they are, JJ McCarthy will have some time to grow. That's my hunch.
Okay, so 3 questions remaining here for you.
Okay.
What opponent coming up is the most intriguing for you, Ahmad?
Can I list four? Like can
No,
I
no, you can't. There's a lot. I agree. There's a lot. It's
Oh,
which
okay.
opponent, not which 4 opponents.
I'm gonna go the Chargers. The Chargers. I think they have the blueprint of how to be successful in the NFL. Coach Harbaugh is doing a phenomenal job with Justin Herbert. Got Omari and Hampton running the ball well. Justin Herbert getting it out to his receivers, and they're playing great defense. They have 3 division wins to start the season, and so I think are they going to continue that momentum? You're talking about going to Los Angeles and playing them on Thursday night football, prime time game. So who's going to be the starter for that game? Is it Carson? Is it JJ? Will they be able to perform under the bright lights? And so I think that's a very intriguing matchup because you're going on the road. If you can win that game, beat a quality opponent, maybe a front runner in the AFC right now, I think that gives you a lot of momentum. But if you lose that game, then you got to look at the rest of your slate and kind of be like, all right, well, can we really compete against the best teams in the National Football League? So that's the game. That's the opponent that I'm circling where, you know what, they got to show up.
I love that pick. I think I circled that as the toughest game on the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
When you play 18 holes and you look at the scorecard and it says one, like this is the toughest hole on the course. That to me is the toughest hole on the course. I would say for intrigue, Vikings and Lions at Ford Field, the House of Horrors recently during the Kevin O'Connell era, where if we go through the last couple of years, it has not gone very well at Ford Field, especially last year. So can they actually get a win there against Dan Campbell's team, which suddenly looks very strong? That leads me to the next question, which is Packers, Lions. Who is the tougher competition for the Vikings going down the stretch?
Lions. Their offense is too explosive, man. I mean, they got weapons all over. Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, David Montgomery got like 12, 13 carries the other day and still managed 2 touchdowns to go over 100 yards. Like their offensive line was a question mark heading into the season, and they're just creating holes for these 2 running backs to run through. Jared Goff has all the time in the world, didn't get sacked versus the Baltimore Ravens. Like, look, I know the Packers, they have a lot of hype surrounding them. Micah Parsons is there. He's made their defense a little bit better, but there's still a lot of question marks with that offense. Like, yeah, you have Josh Jacobs, but is Jordan Love consistent? Is Matthew Golden a true #1 wide receiver? Can Romeo Dobbs hold his on later in the season? Like, I think those are a lot of unknowns, whereas the Lions, their whole problem last year was injuries defensively. Those guys are getting healthy and they still have the same offense. They just don't have the same offensive coordinator. So I think that's the problem. And like you said, going to Detroit has been a horror story for the Vikings recently. And you got to go there to win, especially if you want to be good in the playoffs. So I'm going to have to go with the Lions because they've been there before. They've had more success recently, and they still have all of their guys, whereas the Packers are still trying to figure things out. They just got Micah Parsons, so it's a flashy, shiny object, and everyone is, obsessing and drooling over that.
I do think the Packers defense will continue to be very legit. They have been phenomenal. If JJ McCarthy is the one going to Lambeau, which is also, on the slate, that might be pretty darn tough as we saw how much Detroit struggled there. But
Yeah,
it tends to be the case that offense is a little more consistent than defense from a week to week basis. And I think that you're right. And also that Detroit's defense has started to show up the last couple of weeks where they got off to a really rough start. And if the Packers offensive line looks like that, looked like they did against Cleveland,
right,
against the Vikings, Jordan Love's going to have a really, really long day. So Love to me is not shown an ability, and their receivers, their line, to be consistent week in and week out, even giving all credit to Cleveland. So I might lean ever so slightly Detroit as well, but I think this one's about as close as it gets. Let me look here. I'm curious about the betting market. The betting market has Green Bay to win the NFC plus 400 and Detroit plus 800. So they're
wow,
not as sold on Detroit after those couple of
wow,
wins, which is
that's
interesting.
surprising.
Yeah. I wouldn't have thought that there would be much gap at all between those two.
Yeah, okay,
All right, so here's the final question for you. There's a couple of teams in the league. Amazing how this goes in the NFL, right? We've gone this far, and there's only a couple teams in the NFL that are 3 and 0. I think we all are buying the Buffalo Bills at 3 and 0 because they're a legit Super Bowl favorite. But there's
yeah.
some other teams that maybe their 3 and 0 is a little sus, and that would be the Indianapolis Colts, the Tampa Bay Bucks, and the San Francisco 49ers, whose 3 and 0 is the most legitimate of those three teams. I love the thought you're putting into this. I
I
love it.
know
Yeah.
because I wanted to say the Indianapolis Colts, but I'm like, I don't love their division, and I think a couple of their wins were kind of just like easier wins. Um, I'm gonna have to go Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they've beaten some quality opponents. I think they have the pieces to be a really good football team. Especially because you talk about like a team that was kind of built, shaped around Tom Brady. Then a lot of those guys still remaining, still lingering around. Chris Godwin hasn't even been out there. He's going to be coming back this week, and so their offense is just going to get even more explosive. Bucky Irvin, former University of Minnesota running back, starting for them, and then Rasheed Wright, as a backup. Like, come on now, like that's a lot of firepower. So I think they're legitimate. And you're talking about a former number one overall quarterback finally living up to the billing and playing up to his potential. So I think they have a lot of confidence, and I think confidence is key in the NFL. If you're a confident group, you can go out there and achieve anything. So I'm going to have to go with the Buccaneers. I think that 3-0 start is very legitimate and it's impressive.
Very interesting that the starting quarterbacks of these teams are all former high draft picks who maybe didn't get enough time or develop,
Right,
possibly, or
right.
possibly were thrown into the fire a little too early. I don't know. Maybe I'm just saying that that happens sometimes in
It
the
does.
National Football League. In
It
fact,
does.
it happens all the time. I think that, so you mentioned the wins for Indianapolis. I agree. They beat Miami, they beat Tennessee, and, but their rest of their division, the Jags, just not impressive. Tennessee's going to be a free win for them later. The
Exactly.
Texans are just not who we
Exactly.
thought they were going to be 2 years ago, and that could lead them to being better. Where I think that the NFC West is tough. The Bucks, the unfortunate part, if they were 100% healthy, I'd say, hey, that's a Super Bowl contender. They're really banged up right now, so they might
Yeah.
go through it a little bit early in the season. But I think that they are a real Super Bowl contender as we go down the stretch when they get people back. Because Mike Evans hurt, their offensive line is completely shredded apart, and they
Yep.
found a way to win some games. But San Francisco and Tampa Bay's wins haven't been nearly as impressive as Indianapolis. So I think I would pick Indy and make that tentatively because we just don't know what's coming next. Folks, make sure you go check out the Must Be Two Sides podcast interview with Ahmad, Michael Pruitt, former Viking, and you're having Eric Hendricks on the show. That's awesome. You also do a podcast with Henry Lake, who's a great friend of
Yeah.
mine. Fox
Mhm.
9 coverage. You're doing a lot, man. I love to see it. Love to see out there TCO as well covering the Vikings. So great stuff. I love this bit. I want to keep doing it every once in a while. So I really appreciate you taking the time, man.
Man, thanks for having me on your platform. I really appreciate it. You've done a tremendous job. To go from radio to full-time podcaster, I don't think people know how hard that is. I think a lot of people think anybody can pick up a microphone and broadcast it to people and start making money and create a living off of it. But it's not that easy. And I'm learning that firsthand. So shout out to you and the platform that you've created, the audience that you've built. You're doing a tremendous job. And I appreciate you having me on.
Hey, once I got the camera, microphone, and lighting, the rest was easy after that. That was the hardest part and
Right.
a lot of trial and error there. So, well, I appreciate the kind words and we'll see you very soon, man.
All right, Matthew, take care.